Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Batra, page 62, top of the page, with the words V'i Amar Le Nichse Afilu Bate Valde. And if he said to him, I am selling you my property, it means that he is selling him even his houses and his Canaanite slaves. Mitzar lo, mitzar echad, aroch, umitzar echad katzar, amar Rav, lo kana ella keneged hakatzar. The Gemara continues its examination of the concept of delineating boundaries in a wide manner, and considers the following case. If, in the bill of sale, the seller delineated one boundary line on one side of the field long and the other boundary line on the opposite side of the field he delineated short, Rav said the buyer acquires only a width of land corresponding to the short border, as it is assumed that the short boundary line delineates the actual size of the field that was sold to him, while the long boundary line was merely intended to point to the field under discussion. That is to say, the seller delineated the boundaries in a broad manner, but did not intend to include everything found within those boundaries in the sale. Amru le Rav Kahana v'Rav Asi l'Rav vayikneh keneged rosh tor shesik Rav. Rav Kahana and Rav Asi said to Rav, but let him also acquire the triangular plot, rosh tor, bounded by the diagonal line connecting the end of the short border and the end of the long border. Rav was silent and did not respond. Umo de Rav, and Rav concedes. Hechadika mitzar Ruven v'Shimon mechad gisa, mitzar Levi v'Yehuda mechad gisa, midahave le lemechtav le, Ruven keneged Levi v'Shimon keneged Yehuda, and Rav concedes that where there is a boundary line defined by the fields of Reuven and Shimon on one side of the field being sold, and a boundary line defined by the fields of Levi and Yehud on the other side, and in the bill of sale the seller describes the field being sold as bordered by the fields of Reuven and Shimon on one side, but mentions only the field of Levi on the one side, since he had intended to sell only half the field. He should have written for the buyer in the bill of sale that the field is bordered by the field of Reuven on the one side, which is opposite that of Levi on the other, or by the field of Shimon on one side, which is opposite that of Yehuda on the other, but he did not write that for him. One can conclude from it that he is telling him that he is selling him not only the area between the fields of Reuven and Levi, but also the triangular plot bounded by the diagonal line connecting the end of Shimon's field to the end of Levi's field. Mitzer Reuven Mizrach L'Marav Umetzar Shimon Safon Vidarum. The Gemara continues, if the field being sold is bounded by the fields of Reuven on the east and the west, and it is bounded by the fields of Shimon on the north and the south, it is not enough to designate the field for the buyer as the field between the fields of Reuven and Shimon, but it is necessary to write for him in the bill of sale that the field is bounded by the fields of Reuven on two sides, and it is bounded by the fields of Shimon on two sides. Otherwise, all that the buyer acquires is a triangular plot bounded by one of Reuven's fields and one of Shimon's fields, and the boundary is the diagonal line connecting the end of Reuven's fields to the end of Shimon's fields. A dilemma was raised before the sages. Siyam lo es hakaranos mahu, kimin gam mahu, v'serugin mahu teko. Now this is going on to 62b, but to finish the idea. A dilemma was raised before the sages. If the seller defined for the buyer only the corners of the field being sold, what is the halacha? Does this mean that he is selling him only the corners of the field, or the entire field marked by those corners? A second dilemma was also raised. If he defined the boundaries of the field in a shape resembling the Greek letter gamma or the English letter L, gamma looks like an L, noting the boundaries on two adjacent sides that meet at a right angle, what is the halacha? Does this mean that he is selling in the entire field, or the triangular plot marked by those boundaries on the diagonal line running from the end of one to the end of the other? V'seirugin mahu, a third dilemma was also raised before the sages. If the seller defined the boundaries of the property he is selling in an alternating fashion, mentioning only some of the fields bordering each side of the field being sold while omitting others, what is the halacha? No resolution was found to these questions, and these dilemmas shall stand unresolved. Teku. So now I'm just thinking that, this teku that was put forth in the book of Rabbi Pessin that counts all the tekus, it lists 317 tekus, but there's probably a lot more than that, because some of the tekus have like a few questions per teku. It's like here you have Kranos, Kamingam, and Sarugin. You have three things, but it's all just one teku. So the actual amount of questions in each teku, it could be, it's possible it could be 400 or 500 actual questions, maybe even more. But there's 317 tekus, like word teku, and this is the 159th, according to his Sofer. It's the 159th teku, which means that we just surpassed the halfway point, because 316 would be 158, half of 316, and then 3 and 159 is already 318. So 317 is right in the middle. So we just passed the midway point of tekus in the Talmud, and it's not evenly split, because the half of Shas was actually almost a year ago. Half of Shas occurred around Kedushin 38. It's like 1330, 3.5 years about, or so, 3.25 years, something. And so that's it. Yep. Okay.